inspiration towards Europe. I strongly believe that there's a huge need to bring back that imagination and that in Europe there is really a strong potential for desirable possible futures, and we have to work on that.
Indeed, and I hope that we can achieve some of the work through the European Pavilion as well, which is also what I would like to ask you. I mean, as I mentioned, you've been involved at the very beginning of this project, and you have started also different processes with your communities within your context, and I would like you to tell us a bit more about what's going on. Dia, would you like to start?
Yes, of course. So again, thanks to ECF invitation, Cultura Nova is involved in the development of European Pavilion idea. We started our journey understanding EP in a plural. The European Pavilion is not envisaged as just one pavilion, but many that would grow across Europe. Variety of forms, size, and territories would better reflect cultural diversity present in Europe, we think so. Through our collaboration within the European Pavilion, Cultura Nova will bring the voices of our specific national, local, but also regional perspective on the European scales. Collaborating with experts from our region, Teodor Celakovski and Ana Žuvela from Croatia, Iskra Geševska from Macedonia, Sheila Kameric from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Višnja Kisic and Goran Tomka from Serbia. We are exploring the future modalities of European pavilions, which will not be an exclusive and elitist permanent zone, but a trajectory of European diversity, zones of participatory practices that engage numerous actors, especially the ones previously marginalized, zones of exchanging and sharing between the peripheries and the centers, zones of strategic cooperation between sectors, disciplines, and territories. So in that line, starting through establishing the different zones, different pavilions, we basically imagine European pavilions through its penetration to all segments of our dominant cultural canon. In our work, we take into account the challenges we need to respond to, but also the pitfalls we need to avoid. We consider the cultural system, its deficit, and the need for their improvement. We also examine how to include the green dimension in a more explicit manner. But we don't think only about the context in which European Pavilion will be implemented or the conceptual side of the idea. We are also thinking about very pragmatic and practical aspects of the initiative. So this includes questions like how to determine where the European pavilions will be, how they will be at all in virtual, physical, hybrid, and so on. Will the European Pavilion be established regionally or micro-locally? Who will be the host of the pavilions? What kind of the bodies? National, regional, local, public, civil, or private? Who will the intended modality of European pavilions fit into European and national cultural policy is also one of the questions which resonate to us. So what we are doing, we are exploring the possibility of creating elements and standards for downloading based on which each European pavilion can be then tailor-made depending on the specific needs, interests, and the context of the culture and the local community across Europe. We are also considering sortition democracy, democratic lottery, and how we can use these principles within the European Pavilion or the pavilions in Europe. But a system that can include randomness operates on a matrix of speculation and uncertainty, which is unnatural to the system, since the system must be reliable, clear, pragmatic, and consistent. So we are exploring European Pavilion between these two observations. how to balance between a flexible and responsive cultural system that is able to recognize and to use these random principles and to react to the invisible. Of course, in the COVID-19 context, we exchange with our group of thinkers in the virtual sphere on a regular basis, but we are also planning to organize a retreat in physical space at the end of the summer, when we expect to have a better situation, hopefully. We are also going to engage to 5 collaborative platforms in Europe, supported by Cultura Foundation, that comprehend 53 organizations from 16 European countries. And with them, we will explore the future of European pavilions according to the needs of those cultural actors and the possibility of extending the Cultura Nova grant scheme for collaborative platforms in Europe within the European Pavilion. So based on our inputs, but also taking the inputs of our colleagues from Camargo Foundation and their process, and based on actions implemented by ECF during this year, we are going to formulate the modalities and the future of European pavilions. And we expect to have a proposal for the future of European Pavilion, hopefully till the end of October of this year. So this is basically on which we focus through our work on the European Pavilion.
And that's a lot of work. Julie, would you like to tell us a little bit also how the Camargo Foundation is thinking of the European Pavilion?
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Dia. Maybe before starting on that, I will I'm not here as only it's like not about me, Julie should know, but it's very much about Camargo Foundation and what is, and probably most of you don't know about it, so probably I will just say a few words about it before that, and it will explain, and then you can understand what is our position in this process and in this program of European Pavilion. The Camargo Foundation, it's a residency center for artists, scholars, and thinkers. Is based in Cassis, next to Marseille. It's very much, and is really like on the edge of the Mediterranean, really on the south border of Europe. It's and really like close to Marseille, and so not only we're facing the Mediterranean, but we are also in a place that is facing the sea, in a national park, in the Calanque National Park. So the landscape is very present. Also, it's a place over the last 50 years that has been welcoming artists, scholars, and thinkers, mainly to reflect, to research, to pose, to exchange, and from really different disciplines. And that's really and it's very international, and actually was funded by an American artist and scholar, very much experimental film from the 50s, 60s. So it's really from that perspective that we have been talking in actually already in the beginning of of last year during the COVID period, and the beginning of the COVID, we have been exchanging with Viviane and with Laure and other people from the ECF about the need to bring back positive imagination, like to not be all the time in dystopia, but to bring back something positive, ideas about the future, to be able to think positively and to imagine, and also with the COVID coming in, but not only the COVID, because I think it was just a way to bring light on realities that were already there, like this question of what happened in 2015 when migrants came, like this question of each country came and closed, but also the rise of the political like extremes. I think the need to say let's step aside and let's look where do we want to go, and so that's really coming from that we have been exchanging a lot with ECF team over 2020, And also when talking about the European Pavilion, and I totally agree with Leah, I think we really need to put an S there. It's really, the idea was from our perspective, from Camargo perspective, was to say it would be important to still find, to not to define purely what is a European Pavilion, because I don't think it should be strictly defined, but to have a text or to have some references that can bring some common ground, and then open up with questions. So there is, and be able to create a thread of for this constellation of pavilions. And so that's what we have been, and to be able to talk with different thinkers, different artists, different philosophers about that, and what could be this common ground that could like define some common content about the European Pavilion, and open up with questions. So we have been also wondering about, like, because it's European, maybe let's look at people that are more from outside Europe, probably from Asia mainly, also to again, sorry, background in China and in Asia quite a lot. And also question of generation, we ask ourselves, like, who can frame such text? Like, are we going to look for one of those big figures, or are we going to look for more a younger generation? Also, what type of text are we looking at? Like, for example, in the common ground that the European, that ECF just released, this publication, or that is currently online, there is, the beginning is start by something about 2081 or 2039, I don't remember, but something in the future, which I think is also something like that. So we are really looking at bringing together a few people at Camargo in late August, more collective, because we don't believe that one person can frame such program, but it should be more collective, bringing people from outside Europe, bring people from Europe, and just have this, maybe have a few texts or one text that will be a framework for the program of European Pavilion. And that will, again, it's super important that it should be open, because the process and the diversity and of answers and also being very open is very open to that everybody can find his place in this program of European Pavilion. As you can hear, there's still a lot to be defined and to be precise. But I think that's also, it's very much about the process, and it's very much to have a multitude of answers. And so that's why I think the idea to have a constellation of pavilions is super important. And that will be so the idea is to be more or less in the same time scale than DEA. So by fall, we can have this and share it and go on working all together and asking questions all together.
And what would you hope for Camargo through that project?
I think for us, Camargo, I mean, like I was saying, Camargo is a place to welcome people. It's a residency center with, like, it's a human size, it's 13 apartments, so usually there are 10 to 20 people on site. So it's a human size place where people can exchange, discuss. It's of course a place where people can take time looking at the horizon, looking at the Mediterranean, like pausing, being in this place. And so I think Camargo is a perfect place to reflect and to pause and to conceive some ideas and some questions. But then to make some changes and to talk about this program, for example, of European Pavilion, it needs to happen somewhere else. So it's only a part of the process that is possible to do at Camargo. And it's super important to be part of a bigger network with other organizations, other persons, and that then it makes sense. Camargo alone doesn't make sense. So that's, for me, that's why I think it's really important to be all together. Also, again, it makes sense because Europe is not one. We are all from different places, different perspectives, and it's only by bringing different perspective and changing our perspective that we probably can do something different and imagine something different.
Thank you, indeed. And I wanted also to ask you, Dea, what you hope it brings to your work, to your organization, to Cultura Nova?
I see basically the great potential of European pavilions for the whole system, and to bring the space of changing of this dominant narrative and the connotation of ingrained meanings of words, notions, and the concepts without creating a new terminology and new words. So in that line, I see the European pavilions can become a compelling policy change maker. So it's obviously that I expect from European Pavilion to bring us closer to expected systemic change within culture in Europe, or to use terminology of a cultural deal for Europe, to bring culture in the heart of European future. So what I see for the European Pavilion, I also see for Cultura Nova Foundation and for our context. So everything is interconnected. And what I really like in this process, that we all together experiment and that we really work together. So in that sense, I really hope that we, at the end, we will create such an amazing initiative and a grant scheme for different kind of artistic voices and marginalized voices on the center, but also on the periphery. Because without this interconnection among different sectors, territories, disciplines, I can't see the better future. So this is what I expect.
Thank you, and thank you for embarking on this journey with us. I hope we will also gather more partners and continue this discussion and this project with many more people. I would like now to also welcome Anna-Livia Friel and Marco Provinciali from the EU Pavilion Collective, and Tijmen Ogenest and Jessie van der Pleuk from Studio Wild. Thanks for being with us as well. So EU Pavilion is a collective that brings together a group of architects and designers who embarked on research on the relationship between architecture and the European Union. And we were talking about Venice earlier. Well, actually through their work, they hope to spark a discussion around the institution of a European Pavilion at the Venice Biennial. They will tell us a bit more about that. Well, no, actually, go ahead. I'll introduce Studio Wild just after.
Okay, thank you very much, Laure, for inviting us today to present our project and to celebrate Europe's Day together. We'd like to thank also ECF for supporting our work. Actually, it's one of the first times we present a project publicly and that we announce its final outcome, which will be an online exhibition. I am Anna-Livia Friel and Marco Provinciali. We are both architects, and we are part of a bigger team working as a research laboratory on the relation between EU and architecture. The team is composed of architecture practice Supervoid from Rome, designers and M3 and Bruno from Milan and Venice, and photographer Giorgio De Vecchi, also from Venice. In this slide, you can see our website, which is conceived as a growing archive of the research. EU Pavilion started in 2018 as a research project producing essays, events, and teaching. but the final goal of the research is to advocate for the establishment of a European pavilion at the Venice Biennale. So we are currently organizing an exhibition devoted to the imagination of that very pavilion, involving architectural and artistic practices from all over Europe. Well, as citizens and designers, we acknowledge architecture as a fundamental aspect of an inclusive and democratic public realm. And in the light of the current debate around the strengthening of the European integration, we argue that a critical reconsideration of the spaces where this process happens is a fundamental aspect of the collective character of the European project. So this is observation started with a survey on the place where the European Union establishes its physical manifestations, Brussels, the city of Brussels. The common perception depicts the EU as a technocratic body essentially concerned with the normativity, financial austerity, bureaucracy. Most of these narratives of the EU are a consequence of its inception as a stealth project, initially defined by economical and trade treaties, and ultimately by its reaction to the 2008 financial crisis with regards to some of its member states. So while this perception and the policies underlying it are rapidly shifting in the wake of the response to the current crisis, a proper shared cultural project seems to be yet to come. On the other hand, the European Union, which settled itself in the Quartier Leopold in Brussels, starting from the end of the 50s, making itself a promoter of significant property developments in the area, seems to have adopted planning indeterminacy as a programmatic manifesto. Over the years, this lack of planning has exposed it to various criticisms, both from committees of Brussels citizens and from a broader academic and cultural community. The former complain of the systematic negation of a real public space, failed opportunity to build in relation to the surrounding urban fabrics, and the inability of the entire quarter to assume a cohesive role within the city. In addition to these are the formal criticism of the buildings, which range from anonymous bureaucratic drabness to unjustified facadism, which tend to preserve the facades of historical buildings completely deprived from their original meaning and relation with the constantly changing urban fabric. Here you can see the rear side of the Gare de l'Europe before the demolition and during the construction of the Parliament building in Brussels. So, because of these two themes that open up a substantial question converge in the study. Can architecture change the image of a great institution, and can it contribute to the definition of a new international identity? At the base of the exhibition we are organizing lies the belief that architecture still has a potential to be a powerful tool to communicate a political project. Can be part of a renewed and more open communication strategy that should try to overcome the notorious iconographic deficit first underlined by Rem Koolhaas in the Image of Europe project in 2003. In this slide, we can see the pavilion built by OMA in that occasion, located in the Place Schumann.
So, in a way, we have been listening in the previous presentations about the European Pavilion, some considerations about content, while we would like to focus on the container. And so coming to the project side, which is of course Venice, we chose it because in our opinion, the Venice Biennale and the typology of the pavilion could provide a testing ground for a new kind of European public and cultural building. The pavilion, an architectural object capable of disentangling itself from any specific function, lands as an ideal test site for a more wide-ranging reflection on the possible futures of a new European architecture, and more specifically on the language of the representative institutional buildings of a supranational structure like the European Union. What you see here is a selection from a photographic survey of the project site, so the Giardini of the Biennale and their national pavilions, done by photographer Giorgio De Vecchi, who is part of the research team. So the national pavilions inside the Giardini della Biennale are bound by relationships that allow a clear reading of the historical development of the site and present through their form a vivid image of the political will of the nations that built them at that very moment in history. While the balance of power between the Western countries is clearly represented and national languages dominate the facades of the pavilions during the first decades of the 20th century, starting from the 50s, the ambition to belong to a broader cultural territory comes along with a new and international architectural language. What you see here is a drawing analyzing the historical evolution of the pavilions in the Giardini that we designed as part of our research. In the current context, it is clear how the saturation of the Giardini brought about by the pavilions is not only physical, but also ideological, insofar as it was born out of a 20th century national paradigm, informing the display of cultural and artistic production. Breaking this paradigm means, for us, creating the conditions to ask questions about new representative languages, with the understanding that, albeit free from localist drives, pavilions continue to be fundamental instruments of identity assertion. The project for a European pavilion at the Biennale constitutes therefore a vital opportunity to overcome the tired dialectic between national and international aspirations. The exhibition itself brings together a wide range of contributors working in the field of architecture and art across different countries in Europe. The selected practices are bound by a specific focus on spatial practice and belong to the generation that grew up in the context of a politically unified Europe. The exhibition encouraged the debate, even the clash between different positions, and a critical approach aiming to overcome the dichotomy between the architect as genius and the architect as bureaucrat, which informed important design commissions for international institutions such as the UN buildings in New York and Paris in the 50s, and seems to have somehow affected many commissions of buildings for the European institutions too. Each proposal for the pavilion will be presented through a model of the same pavilion in scale 1 to 20. The model is regarded as a media which is capable of bridging between disciplines more similar in scale to a sculpture than to a building, with the potential to be extremely abstract or extremely descriptive. It has been chosen for its immediacy and ability to communicate the project to a broad public, not necessarily specialized in architecture. Each model will be filmed, and the resulting videos will be exhibited on a specifically designed website, which will be published in the coming fall. Finally, we'd like to close our presentation with this montage of the European flag upon a painting by Arduino Cantafora of the Giardini, a painting that depicts the Giardini in their original state before the advent of the Biennale in 1895, an image that for us conveys a sense of expectation and hope. Thank you.
Thank you both. And I would like also to add that the new issue of Artist magazine is just released, and that you contributed with a conversation with Romano Prodi, and the whole issue is about the question of European architecture. So a bit of promotion.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And I would like now to invite Timon and Jesse. So Timon and Jesse are part of the, well, actually initiated Studio Wild, which is which is a young Dutch architectural practice that strives to develop provocative designs and to overcome the current limits of architecture. And so You are working on the Forbidden Garden of Europe, which will also be presented as part of the upcoming Architecture Biennial in Venice as well, as part of the Dutch program. So thank you, and we are all ears.
Cool, we will share our screen and enlighten you. Well, good evening, everyone. We are Studio Wild, architecture practice based in Amsterdam. My name is Timon Hogenels, and this is my colleague Jesse van der Ploeg. We are an architecture practice that is very much interested in the relationship between architecture, landscape, and nature. And this is one of our first projects.
Yeah, it's a project very much reacting to conditions in borders. This is a village in which we did many work. This is our first work that we did there. It's on the border of Italy and Slovenia. It's a marginal area which is characterized by decay. And it really builds forts upon notions of people going away from areas, an area which is influenced by multinational influences, since it's partly has a Slovene character, but also Italian. And Studio Wild really works a lot in this type of border conditions where political, landscape, and cultural aspects come together in various architectural expressions.
And within the same village, we recently started a new project where we try to revitalize this abandoned mountain community with the means of culture. So we really see culture as a tool to revitalize those regions, and we're working on a renovation of an abandoned farmhouse, which we aim to transform in an artist residency, where we want to invite different member states from all over Europe to participate and to kind of envision new strategies to revitalize these abandoned rural communities. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what we as an architecture practice are working on. And today we are here to talk about our most recent project, the Forbidden Garden of Europe, which will be a physical garden in Venice during the Venice Biennale this coming summer.
Yeah, and this project is, amongst others, being made possible with a very vital contribution of the European Cultural Foundation, and together with a series of other partners, we made this project possible. And so the project is about a series of alien invasive species, a series of species which the European Union has defined, which are not suitable to live in Europe anymore, which are considered a threat, and which originally originate from other continents.
And these plants, they have been around in the continent for over 200-300 years. They are introduced by explorers, imported from overseas colonies and brought to botanical gardens. And now, since 2016, they are illegal to trade, sell, transport, and they need passports to cross European borders. And this we find very intriguing and was the starting point for our project of the Forbidden Garden of Europe.
Yeah, and so these plants, they are, as Timon noted, it's illegal to buy, sell, grow, trade them. Only a few institutions are allowed to grow these type of plants, among which botanical gardens. And the botanical garden in Padova has become our partner since they are allowed to grow and collect these plants. They are able to grow them for us, and here is a selection of these plants end of the summer last year, and here an image of just 2 weeks ago in which they are already grown a lot.
Yeah, and what's also very interesting is that some of these species are actually imported or introduced to the continent by the Orto Botanico in Padova. So there's a rich history of these plants migrating from continent to continent, brought into Europe for economic purposes, but also because of their beauty. So these plants have a very rich history, and now they became illegal.
Yeah, so we aim to bring them together in a new context and shed new lights on what it means that we collect plants and define where they can and cannot live. So we want to bring them together in the Venice Biennale this summer, around which we will build a guarded wall, like a garden.
Yeah, so this forbidden garden will be an indoor garden on Giudecca, and we envisioned this blue enclosure, which kind of symbolized this more rigid human kind of organization. And in contrast, we have these big piles of soil, more rough, depicting nature. And on these piles of soil, we try to cultivate coexistence. We try to inspire people and to question how we could arrange things differently and look at these kind of complicated topics with a new, fresh perspective. And within this exhibition, there will be also audio available, a series of podcasts where you will hear the migration stories and the arrival stories of these plant species to the European continent.
Yeah, and so with this exhibition, we want to question this type of legislation, as these plants came here hundreds of years ago, and now as humans, we define a series of borders, we define a series of countries, we define larger structures of regions such as the European Union. And with these type of organizations are in the first place, envisioned for creating more inclusion and creating better societies, but at the same time, they also are systems which can cultivate exclusion. And with this very specific example of the European Union defining a series of plants which are not allowed to live within a certain series of lines that we have imagined ourselves as humans, we want to really question if this type of legislation always really contributes to a more better and free society.
Yeah, so I think this project is very much about borders, and what we are aiming to do is to question these borders, and I think to renegotiate these and with this pavilion we are aiming to cultivate coexistence.
Yeah, so this summer the garden will be installed on Giudecca in Venice, and here we hope to really start new discussions, make people think about what we are doing, what we are as a species, how we can cultivate coexistence, how we should deal with these type of topics, which relate to plants, animals, humans, and how we can live together in a better and new society.
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you. I mean, I think for me it's really interesting to have both your initiative on board. I mean, also understanding how you push what we understand by architecture, and how that becomes really like a ground for social transformation. And I think in this idea of building this European pavilion, allow ourselves to understand architecture in a broader way is very, very important. I was wondering if, having heard earlier from Julie and Dea, if you, Anna, Olivia, Marco, Timon, and Jesse, also based on your quite tangible practices, what would be your sort of vision for the pavilion, or recommendation, or how do you see it? Or how do you, you are contributing to it, but I was just curious. We asked the question to Dea and Julie.
Yeah, well, I speak for myself, but I think there's a great opportunity to have a kind of critical and reflective attitude with the pavilion. So I think it would make a lot of sense to kind of has this as a main ambition to embed it locally, but to still keep these critical attitudes towards certain systems and current kind of conditions. So
I mean, from our side, I guess that well, on one side we see this experiment in design as an experiment, so we still don't know the outcome, and we do this project precisely to kind of explore a set of possibilities in mostly, I would say, from our side, in reaction to what is there now. So where can we go to from what is there now in terms of, you know, places for displaying culture and art, physical places. So a prototype is, of course, located in Venice, but could be, you know, it is a prototype, so it could be done elsewhere as well. So that's one of the aims of our reflection. And yeah, I think it also relates to what was said right at the start about the temporality of the pavilion. So it is, for example, the Venice Biennale is a bit of a paradox in which pavilions, which are by definition a temporary structure, are there from some of them from more than 100 years. So, you know, it's all like a very kind of broad discourse which takes into account so many issues, and but which are really interesting to deal with. And as we have seen, like, there is a resonance in between the kind of architecture in which processes happen and how these processes and institutions are perceived. So we don't really see a detachment, but we see a resonance in that, and that is why we think that there is the necessity for a further exploration of this.
Thank you. And Julie and Dea, I think this was the first time you heard about those two initiatives. Do you have any reaction, or, you know, how does that spark you further imagination on the pavilion?
I think you talked about with us about both projects, and I'd been reading on your website about both, and so I was very interested to really see the presentation and hear about, like, the four of you to talk about it, about each project. And I think when I mean, of course, when we were talking about this program of European Pavilion, always we talked about also having something physical, a physical space, or, I mean, and I'm probably not so good at those online questions. I'm very much about the physical meeting and physical space, and even more after this year and a half of COVID. So it's really important. I was taking notes while you were talking, because I really think indeed, not only it's about the discussion we have and what we as Camargo can bring in, is it should not be only about the concept and the intellectual thinking about it, but also about the physicality of it, and it should not be separated, and it should be together. It should be a process together, because what can be shared together in a space, it's not only about the people that are there, but it's also about what the space, other space is conceived, and other space is sought and built. And so I'm rethinking, and Laure, we should talk about it.
Dea, do you want the last word before I conclude?
No. Just one sentence. I really like all contradictions of this initiative, from the name to the initial idea, from some theoretical point of view, but also from some practical point of view. But the crucial would be how to balance between the top-down approach and the bottom-up. So how to create basically the potent platform for diverse voice, for different discussion, for, you know, challenging views, for creation of new knowledge and the productions in the future. And with this, I would stop, because I know that you have to close our brief discussion. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I wish we would have more time. But I hope that the personal reflection and the different projects and approaches shared during this last hour gave you a sense of what we hope to achieve with the European Pavilion. Of course, there is much more to come, and we are looking forward to launching the program this autumn. And before I say goodbye, I would like to return to the audio clip that you heard at the very beginning of this session. This was an extract from the series of podcasts that we have been producing over the last few months. So we have invited personalities from the arts and culture and beyond to reflect with us on Europe and our shared future. We have talked about the relationship between Europe and the nation state, about citizenship and representation, about public space and ecology, and about the image of Europe and why it matters. Today, Today, to mark the occasion of Europe Day, we are releasing our final episode, and I warmly invite you to listen to it on our webpage, the europeday.eu. And as you may remember, Europe Day marks the anniversary of the Schuman Declaration, which proposed that a common trade in coal and steel will ensure lasting peace and unity in Europe. Today's challenges show us that this ideal from 71 years ago no longer endures. So for this concluding episode, we have invited 3 guests from 3 generations of Europeans to look back at the European project and to look ahead to the future. And we ask ourselves, what could be in the years to come, the cement that holds us together, the emotional and material bond, or what I'd like to call the cementiment, that will weave a sense of Europeanness. And with this question in mind, I would like to thank you all for listening today. And as I said, the European Pavilion has only just begun, so stay tuned.
Thanking you all for participating in this very exciting event where we are going to present, besides this physical space, the movement of the coalition that is the Citizens Takeover, which emerged 1 year ago. And we will start with a round of presentations. The first presenter or intervenient will be Niccolo Milanese. And he's, besides visiting fellow at the Institute for the in Vienna, he's also the director of European Alternatives. He has been in the chair for 14 years, if I'm not mistaken, and he's an EU expert who will be glad to give you the first introduction to Citizens Takeover.
Thanks, Alba. What an introduction. And thanks also to Thomas and to Alain. It's great to be virtually in this STEM Europa space. It seems a really fitting space for this event, and I can't wait to be there physically, if only to use this incredible remote control camera that you were showing us, Thomas. So I want my opportunity to play with that when we can go physically there. Citizens Takeover Europe was started around about a year ago, just over a year ago now, by over 50 civil society organizations from across the continent, wanting to assert the centrality of citizens and citizens' agency to any discussion about the future of Europe. We were aware, and this was the beginnings of the first lockdowns, we were aware that indeed for over a decade, Europe has been being discussed. The future of Europe has been being discussed, whether it is what's going to happen with the euro, what should we do about deaths in the Mediterranean, what should the European Union do about climate change has been discussed in schools and in squares, Brexit, and then with the COVID crisis, what should the European Union do to address this new crisis? This discussion has been going on amongst the citizens and the residents of the European Union and its neighboring countries for over a decade. And we wanted to take the moment of COVID to come together and make sure that conversation could keep on going. But we're also aware there was an institutional initiative called the Conference on the Future of Europe that the institutions are planning on launching. And we wanted to make sure, wise as we are to the way the institutions sometimes work, that in this institutional initiative, the citizens couldn't be bypassed, and that we as civil society empowering citizens were able to take part as a critical observer, critical actor inside the conference to make sure that this conversation that's going on in the street, in the cafe, around dinner tables, and over the past year over Zoom amongst the citizens meets up with the institutional discussions and talks about the issues that everybody is really concerned about. And so for over a year, we've been running events like this. We've been discussing amongst all the organizations. We've been coming up with principles on how any conference on the future of Europe ought to work. We have been running our own process of discussing with citizens about what's important, and we're going to be continuing to run that process over the coming year and a half through the official conference on the future of Europe, and I'm sure beyond as well. You're going to hear in a few minutes much more about the different initiatives of the coalition. But what has been central to us all the way through this year of meeting and what's carrying us further and further is the certainty that it really is the citizens that will decide ultimately on the future of our common continent, because we create it together every day. We create it together every day through discussions, through our actions, through caring for one another. And those are the values of Citizens Take Over Europe. And we'll do everything that we can to promote them in the institutions, but even more importantly, to promote them amongst the people right across the continent and beyond. So I'm really thrilled that everybody is joining us today for this event, which is part of a whole week-long series of events, which already started a couple of days ago, organized by Citizens Takeover. And I'm pretty excited for the discussion that's going to come. Alba.
Thank you, Nicolo, for this great intervention and this enticer to the start of what we're going to present, each of the parts of the coalition, the implications, its work, and how we're functioning so far. Before we actually go into further details and the specific aspects of the coalition, more delay, I'm going to give the floor to our next intervention or panelist, who is Michele Fiorillo. He's part of Civic Europa. He's also engaged in many grassroots movements, and he's also part of the working group of self-organization and advocacy within the Citizens Takeover Coalition.
Yes, thank you very much, Alba, and everyone organizing this very interesting, I think, important panel. And thanks the STAM Europa team to virtually meet us and host us, and let's hope really to be able soon to get all together there in other many places around Europe. You asked me, Alba, to talk about the work we have made with the working group on self-organization and citizen assemblies about the possibility to scale up the model of the citizen assemblies, which is one of the participatory and deliberative tools. They are in experimentation since some decades all around Europe, and not only in Europe, to allow citizens to be really protagonists of the public democratic life beyond only voting at elections. Before Nicola was referring to how we get also this coalition around the idea that citizens could have some agency, not only at the national and local level, but also at transnational European level. And this agency probably is deeply intertwined with the destiny of Europe. I think this is something more or less we all share in the coalition. Without further involvement of citizens, Europe will not accomplish its project of a democratic, transnational and supranational public space. The idea was to imagine a new type of democratic space, starting to experiment ourselves and gathering all together the experience of deliberative democracy, particularly of citizen assemblies, not only from G1000 to the Irish citizen assemblies and so on, and see how we could imagine a new tool for European democracy. And we come out with a manifesto for a European Citizen Assembly that was published also in some newspaper, European newspaper like Le Soir. And the idea basically is to have at some point a new tool, also a new institution for European Union where citizens could gather constantly and deliberate together on the common good of Europeans on specific matter to be established each time with a process of participatory agenda setting, with the model of representation through sortition, which is actually the concept of contemporary theory on what citizen assembly mean. Now the agreement is when you talk about citizen assembly, you basically get a large panel of citizens. They are representing the different sectors of societies, the different kind of sensibility due to the age, the cultural provenance, the type of work and type of social condition, and we started also with the help of the friends of Sortition Foundation to start to imagine some kind of model to have this type of sortition. Now, and of course, transnationality will be an important asset as we, and a fundamental asset, as also we outline it together with the advocacy working group coordinated by Daniela, who is also here. So we drafted these 10 together with experts on deliberative democracy from all the corners of Europe, 10 principles on how European citizen assemblies should work. And transnationality is probably the core point, meaning by that the possibility to have a sortition on a pan-European scale, but at the same time representation and connection with the national and local exercise of citizen assemblies and deliberation. So we had this manifesto, and then we moved to these 10 principles. Now, I don't know, Alba, tell me how much time we have, because I would like also to give the floor for the probably most delicate and complicated part of this discourse to Carsten, to respect on what is going on now in the European institution about this kind of ideas. But just maybe I can name by title the 10 principles for European citizen assemblies. So first of all, European citizen assembly should be participatory. As we have seen in the poll, little poll we had here, this is considered from the large majority of us as the core question. Second principle, inclusivity, in connection with the sortition aspect of the citizen assembly. So the sortition should really represent all the sector of society, and even we said also to represent not just citizens, but also residents, part of our European Union space, and even imagine a connection with the broader society outside of European Union. Third, impactful outcomes. That means that it's important that once the deliberation are done, should be by the assembly, should be clear how these outcomes are taken on by the institution or whoever asked the assemblies to deliberate on something. So that should be not just an exercise that stay there and then there is no follow-up. Bottom agenda setting, we already talked about. Yeah, deliberative. So I think to conclude, deliberative methods, transnational exercise. Yeah, we can put this on the link. But So now if Carsten maybe would like to tell us a bit how actually these ideas that we were discussing since some months and probably years, some of us, they somehow influence the construction of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And now probably the 9th of May will be announced citizen panels, transnational citizen panels that will contribute to the results of the Conference on the Future of Europe. But there are probably some complication there if the institution don't hear the practitioner and expert of deliberative democracy and this coalition has many other civil society organizations about how well organized these citizen panels.
Okay, Karsten, if you want to have the last say about the European Citizens Assemblies and how they are organized.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alba and Michele, for your great explanation. What is here at stake? This could actually turn out to become the real game changer in the Conference on the Future of Europe, but we don't know yet if this is really going to happen because the institutions are still negotiating between each other how to actually facilitate this. We have very little time here, but and this is not public yet, but from what we know, key topic is, of course, how many topics one citizens panel will actually be dealing with. We say there should be only one topic per citizens panel. Then the composition is a very contentious point also. We have the classical socio-demographic variables to be, so to say, to be demonstrate, so to say, the microcosm of the European society by providing variables like age, geography, gender, but we also think that this sample which has been drawn is more representative, has to be more representative by also including marginalized groups, and intersectionality questions should be really addressed. Then I keep it short here. The other big question which Michele touched on is, of course, what impact does such a citizens panel will have in the end? And here we as Citizens Take Over Europe recommend, in order to increase the impact, that also some of the random citizens who will be deliberating in this citizens panels in the end, or already during the process, should also be represented in the plenary of the conference. Also, this is a contentious point. And last but not least, it will be also very interesting to see that there will be probably at least 20 national and regional random citizens assemblies in the framework of the conference on the future of Europe. So how these different levels are being interlinked. Also, this is still to be created and exhausted. So I'm really thankful that I can work with you here within Citizens Take Over on this very crucial question. It's a bit technical, but in the end, I think it can really make a big difference. Thank you, Alba.
Thank you, Karsten, for these last notes, and to wrap up the question of how to make citizens more participant, and especially with the question of the panels that they are still kind of configuring within the conference, the executive board, etc., and the different institutions. So we are going now to something quite related to this, and is going to be presented by Laura Galante. She is the co-coordinator of the Constitutional Working Group, and she's also a lecturer at Communication Science at the University of Amsterdam, and she's also a very active member of the coalition. So Laura, please introduce the 10 principles for a citizen-centered conference.
Thank you so much, Alba, for that introduction. I hope everyone can hear me. So like Alba just said, I am going to introduce you to the 10 principles that CTOE so very vehemently promotes this time for the Conference on the Future of Europe. So this is, of course, a little different than what we just heard now. So I'm going to share with you a screen just to make things a little bit more clear for you. I hope everyone can see this. Just bring your thumbs up if you can, just so that I don't know. Perfect. All right. Right, so this is kind of an overview of what I'm going to be talking to you about today regarding the 10 principles. And of course, don't be intimidated by just how convoluted this looks at the moment. I will run you through it in a little bit of a more simpler way. So essentially, what we have right now is kind of the three main bodies. We kind of touched upon participation already, but I want to sort of relate this back to the most important bodies of the Conference on the Future of Europe. So of course we have civil society and citizens as us participating, of course. And on the other hand, we have the Conference on the Future of Europe. As you can see from this chart, there is of course the three main important bodies of the conference, namely the digital platform, the citizen panels, and all those basically inform the conference plenary that takes place every 6 months, as you might know. So the first principle that I am going to bring up here is really the participatory aspect. Now, CTOE, of course, expects and would like to promote participation as much as possible, and of course, make sure that the conference does this. So of course, this principle stems from civil society and citizens themselves. Without them, we would not even be able to have a conference on the future of Europe, which is also why civil society and citizens are represented as a star, because they are sort of the star of the Conference on the Future of Europe, if you will. So as you can also see here, the next two principles are transnationality and inclusivity. And now Michele touched upon transnationality a little bit earlier. I'm going to bring it back here in terms of the Conference on the Future of Europe. So transnationality and inclusivity are very related to participation. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. First of all, transnationality we would expect to be promoted in terms of encouraging and making sure that there is a borderless conference, in a sense that it is not defined by geographical location, and that everyone across all countries of the EU are able to participate both at a local, regional, and national level. So this is very important to ensure that there is a seamless community taking part in this conference. Now, inclusivity is kind of the side of the same coin, because we would want inclusivity to manifest itself in terms of a diversity of backgrounds, a diversity of ethnicities, a diversity of socioeconomic statuses, and in general, a diversity of various demographic characteristics. So these three principles are very important because they really do amplify each other for making sure that there is a wide variety of backgrounds participating in this conference. Now, all of these principles will therefore be able to make sure that a very constructive, deliberative process occurs. That means that politicians will be able to dialogue with participants from all walks of life. And deliberation here is very important in order to ensure that this dialogue happens. And that is kind of how the first, these two bodies of the Conference of the Future of Europe, namely the digital platform and the citizen panels, should also be structured in a deliberative way to encourage a dialogue taking place, so that citizens are not just listeners, but really are active input members of this conference, and which in turn, this will, of course, inform the conference plenary. Now, we would all expect as CTOE members that this entire procedure is as transparent as possible. That means that all the sort of processes that take place in the conference itself, from ideas on the digital platform to political agendas, to documents being produced, remain public, and that remain in the public eye and recorded in all the EU languages, in order to make sure that everyone, not just the people in the conference, but the people surrounding it, are also informed and can follow along with the process, making sure that it is transparent for everyone. And now, of course, CTOE would like the conference to be effective in terms of committing itself to bring up all the proposals that are drawn, and that basically this process has a meaning. It has a final objective, and that is to bring up and to resolve all the different proposals that are being brought upon. And that, of course, leads to accountability, because only by having an accountability to civil society and the citizens, there can be a constructive and healthy feedback loop that will ensure that this conference is as effective as possible. And of course, the other two principles that the CTOE would like to see is visibility of the conference and attractiveness. Without visibility, people will not be able to understand or even know about the conference. So in terms of visibility, we would expect it to be manifested on media, to be brought attention to it as much as possible, to have as much coverage as possible. And attractiveness in terms of the conference, not strictly being just a political exercise, but to create meaningful and relatable narratives through cultural events and art, to be able to create something that citizens not only see as a strictly political exercise. And lastly, we would want civil society and citizens to promote this conference in an open manner. This is a very important principle because it basically brings up the idea that the conference is a bottom-up process. People are able to manipulate the different rules of the conference and to manipulate and to shift the political agenda from the civil society and citizens' perspective onwards. So only through these 10 principles, we would expect the conference to be a successful exercise and not just a communication exercise. So right now we're seeing that some of these principles are somehow and partially being adopted, but there is still a long way to go. And we would expect this to become the new normative standard for the conference to take place. So these are the 10 principles that CTOE would like to see in a conference itself. And now I'm going to bring back to the main room. And basically, I'm going to pass over to Alba, who's going to bring up some new questions for you on Slido for you to answer. So this is something that will require your smartphone. And now I give over the word to Alba.
So thank you, Laura, for enlightening us with the 10 principles that would make definitely the conference more inclusive and more of citizens, which is its main and core purpose. We hope that these elements can be considered to make the conference as successful as possible. We are going to go on to another interactive activity, this time with Slido. Some of you might be familiar, and for those who are not, you just need a smartphone or a computer where to type in slido.com and then write inside the code that you will see appearing in the screen. Okay. So now I hope that you can see the code to participate in the questionnaire. I'll give you a few minutes to join. Your answers are going to be displayed, on the screen. So as soon as you participate, they're going to be displayed. Okay, the first question. We're seeing a change in the polls. Of course, this is a spectrum, so it doesn't mean necessarily that you are completely agreeing or disagreeing, but it's more or less orientative to see the tendencies. Okay, they are changing as you are participating. So my preferred way to participate in EU decision-making is A, shaping agenda and making proposals early, so a more proactive way. And on the contrary, vote once things are decided. This is very important because it touches some topics that we were discussing about deliberative democracy and about making it more participative. So most of you, actually no, we continue changing. Let's wait a few more minutes to see the result. It seems quite static, and it's balancing towards the voting when things are decided. That's actually surprising, even though it's only at 23%, so it means it's not that much representative. But those of you who voted think that it would be better to vote a posteriori instead of taking part on the process. Okay. Then, because we are running out of time, we will go to the second question. I encourage all of you to participate as soon as possible so that we can see the results in the right condition. So this one, describe the European Union. What is it for you in 2 words? 1 or 2 words, you can decide. I'll give you some minutes as well, and the answers will start popping up on the screen. Technical, heavy. Yes, I also agree. It can be quite intense to understand everything. Challenging, yes, it's challenging indeed to have consensus amongst the 27 member states. Solidarity, that's definitely one of the elements that is keeping us together, united. Peace process, definitely is giving stability to the continent. Miracle, yes, sometimes we do witness miracles because we see unexpected events. Economic union, it was, at least it was originated by an economical intention. Beneficial, it is beneficial. We also don't know what would happen if we didn't have the European Union. Bureaucratic, it is bureaucratic. Friendship, I have met many, many friends from different European countries, and I'm very happy and proud about it. Opaque, future, beneficial, great, freedom, advanced. It's quite an advanced project that we should nurture and take care of and definitely participate. Cooperation, consensus. Solidarity seems to be the biggest one. Peace as well, life, quality. Erasmus, I also see there, is quite an important element to freely travel and discover new places around Europe and to feel more European, besides of our national identities. Enabling opportunities is definitely another asset of being part or a resident in the European Union. We can continue now to the third question. I think the EU strengthens or weakens democracy. So you can rate between 1 and 10. And this is orientative, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you are completely in favor, completely against. Strengthens democracy would be 1. Weakens democracy would be 10. Oh, sorry. Yes, actually the opposite. I just confused it. Okay, I was having surprising responses, but the wording order is confused with the answers. Perfect. So most of you that are participating thinks it strengthens democracy. We see a 4 emerging. Okay. The average score is going a bit down, but let's wait a few minutes to see a more static result. Okay, so a 7.7, there's room for improvement, definitely, but still we're quite positive and hopeful that we can continue seeing the European Union more and more democratic. So the average 7.7, 7.6. Let's leave it in 7.6. And we pass to the last question of the poll, which is more about your participation and your opinion as well. In order to achieve my vision for the European Union, the EU needs more. You can pose any element that comes up to your mind. More migrants, so to be more inclusive by essence, or more representative, strengthened in many aspects as well. Competencies, so to be more supranational rather than intergovernmental. Money, definitely, we could have more cooperation from the different member states. Discussions, that's why we're here for, what we're here for. Love, that's an element that works in every case scenario. Emotions, definitely. We need to be also more vocal and show more what it represents to us in an individual and personal level. Safety, federal. Solidarity, definitely. Opening to outside of the EU. Less elitist and less Brussels oriented. Exactly, that's why in the Citizens Takeover, we're trying to take different groups or more local based groups. And I take now the poll, because with this last question, since you said you want to go out of the bubble, I'm going to give the floor to Ophélie Masson, who is going to introduce one of the main projects also of Citizens Takeover, which is coordinating a CTO coordinator, which is the Assemblies of Solidarity.
Thank you very much, Alba. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. So as you can see from my wonderful background, I'm going to be talking about the Assemblies of Solidarity today. So I'm going to show you a very small presentation just to help with understanding how this is designed. I hope you can all see it. And as you can see, I'm in a quite yellow mood today. So basically, the Assemblies of Solidarities are the direct result of the work of the members of the Citizens Takeover Europe coalition. So the coalition was created a year ago at the beginning of the pandemic. And after 1 year of working together about the Conference on the Future of Europe and of improving the participative democracy processes of the EU, it was decided that it's important also for the coalition to be present at local level and to also have some concrete actions to work together towards the future of Europe, which is why this project was born. So the Assemblies of Solidarities have been designed into three phases. So the first one, which we are ending now actually these days, is the agenda setting phase. So essentially knowing what the Europeans want this conference on the future of Europe to be about, which took the shape of two main elements. The first one was an online consultation, which we are actually going to be knowing the results of very shortly, which Ulrike will present to you. And you also will be able to know a bit more about the results of this online consultation on the 9th of May, in a couple of days, on Sunday, on Europe Day itself. So make sure to also join for our event on Europe Day to know more about the results of this consultation. And also 5 consulting events to consult with citizens to know what do they want the future of Europe to focus on. We are now entering the second phase, which is the actual assemblies. So these Assemblies of Solidarities will be citizen-led. There's going to be 20 of them. They will be happening in 12 different countries. And very importantly, they will be taking place in local languages to make them, of course, as accessible as possible, because it shouldn't be expected of anyone to be able to speak English. We all have another language, most of us anyways, have another mother tongue, and it should be made as accessible as possible because it is called Assemblies of Solidarity after all. And then the third and final phase of these Assemblies of Solidarity will be a transnational dialogue phase with 2 transnational festivals, political and cultural festivals, one in Palermo in October and one in Porto in spring 2022. They will involve more than 4,000 citizens. And their goal is to, of course, influence on the Conference of the Future of Europe, which means that this will be done also by feeding into the online platform of the conference on the future of Europe, which was launched by the end of April. And as many of you probably have seen, you can create an account there as a citizen, but it's a rather complex system, which is why also we gather as a coalition to bring your ideas together, to adapt them from local level to European level, and to share them with EU actors, including also MEPs. So these assemblies of solidarity are about three main topics. The first one is about democracy and fundamental rights. The second one is about well-being and health in Europe, which of course we've seen now more than ever is a crucial topic for our future. And the third one is about environment and climate change. I just also really want to mention that these assemblies of solidarities have many different topics, but there is really always a focus that will be kept on the diversity and inclusion of the underrepresented communities, by which I mean people of color, people from the LGBTQI communities, people from the underrepresented communities also such as Roma people or people with disability. And of course, gender equality will always remain one strong focus and angle of all these assemblies of solidarities, and is a matter very important for the work of Citizens Takeover Europe as a coalition. So these assemblies will be taking place in 12 countries. You have here the list of the countries. So Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Spain, and Sweden. So we are trying to be as transnational as possible, which is one of the 10 principles that was explained by Laura just before. So of course, we are trying to respect the 10 principles of the coalition as much as we can. And being transnational is therefore one also of our main points. So essentially, these assemblies are meant to influence on the process of the conference on the future of Europe, but not just. We're also trying to think further, because this is one of several democratic tools that exist at our own level as citizens. So we want to also make sure that we think further, and we think also of the next steps after this. And so I just also want to reinforce this idea that yes, we do work on the conference on the future of Europe, but we are also working towards making citizen assemblies and things such as the assemblies of solidarity a more permanent tool for the future of Europe. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, you can, of course, check our brand new website that is very wonderful at citizenstakeover.eu/takeaction. And if you can also, you want to contact me, you can send me an email if you have further questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ophélie, for this lovely presentation on the project, on the flagship project that you're undertaking with all these efforts in order to make the assemblies of solidarity something which is present in 12 countries and which is also permanent, which is one of the elements that would definitely ease the process of citizens' participation in decision making within the EU. So we are going to give now the floor to one of the initiatives, which is also quite obscure in terms of we want to give visibility to one of the democracy tools that you can use as citizens, which is the European Citizens Initiative. And Virginia, she's the Humans Coordinator, who is going to be the one introducing the different ECI promoters who are also present with us today. So Virginia, please introduce the EU Sign Day Initiative.
Thank you, Alba, and thanks everyone. I will be very quick because I think the protagonists of this round are the promoters of the European Citizen Initiatives. Just a few words to mention what is the EU Sign Day. EU Sign Day, it's a self-organized day that we're gonna promote for the 9th of May, where we aim for increasing the awareness among European citizens of the existing participatory democracy instrument, which is the European Citizen Initiative. I will say now what it is a European Citizen Initiative, so the promoters of ECIs can focus on their matters and issues. It's a way to propose to the European Commission proposals through the collection of 1 million signatures across the EU. This challenge of collecting 1 million signatures is almost impossible to achieve without an adequate level of information. And this connects also to our principles about information on the Conference on the Future of Europe. And the purpose of Youth Sign Day is to give as much visibility as possible of citizens that are already engaged in bringing topics for the future of Europe. So now my alarm is ringing because it's the turn of the ECI's promoters to present their initiatives. I will introduce them one by one. So we start for political rights. So Voters Without Borders is the first on stage to tell us what they're trying to push.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Helena, and I'm going to present Voters Without Borders initiative. What is it about? Well, there are currently 14 million mobile EU citizens, namely those who reside in a different country than their country of origin. However, only 10 to 12% of them are actually exercising their right to vote in country of residence or origin. These figures show us that European political rights and voting rights as a crucial part of the European Union citizenship status are not working properly. And this is exactly where we intervene with our two main goals. First, reforming the existing rights of mobile EU citizens to vote and stand in municipal and European elections by providing more information on individual base and making the registration procedure easier and automatic. Second, extending voting rights to regional and national elections, as well as referendums, in order for European citizens to have a say in the decision-making process of the country where they reside. We demand European action which will cover all these elections in order to stress out the democratic participation and democracy as a fundamental value of the European Union. To conclude, European citizens should be allowed to choose whether to vote in their country of origin or residence. These objectives, in the end, shall contribute to the reinforcement of the concept of European citizenship as introduced by the Maastricht Treaty. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now we move to the digital rights space. First on stage is Reclaim Your Face, Ella Jakubowska.
Thank you, and hi everyone. I'm Ella, here representing the ECI Reclaim Your Face to ban biometric mass surveillance practices. And broadly, we are a campaign to watch the watchers. What does that actually mean? Well, biometric mass surveillance, or in slightly more human language, the use of facial recognition and other tech to scan all of our faces and bodies when trying to go about our lives, is seriously on the rise in pretty much every European country. We're seeing these technologies used in schools, on streets, in supermarkets, airports, metro stations, and so much more, by police, by local authorities, and also by private companies. And it's really, really harmful. In the US, for example, we've seen multiple Black men falsely arrested and even put in jail as a result of this inherently discriminatory tech. And in Russia, the UK, Slovenia, and recently attempted in France, we've seen police trying to use it against people who are legitimately protesting, which really suppresses the voices of people that are trying to rise up for the things that they believe in, and criminalizing those that do want to stand up for their rights. And as if all of that's not bad enough, we're also seeing harms arising against journalists, queer communities, migrants, Roma and Sinti, workers, and many other groups across Europe, thanks to this proliferating use of facial recognition tech. So that's why our ECI is calling on the EU to ban biometric mass surveillance. Last month, we had our first big political success as a result of our ECI, which has reinvigorated our fight, and we are continuing to reclaim faces and public spaces across Europe.
Thank you, Ella. And now Gregory Engels, Freedom to Share. Which I don't see, maybe. So if Gregory is not connected, we move to environmental issues with Clara Cavalcanti from Stop Finning.
Yes, thank you, Virginia. I hope everyone can hear me. Yeah. So I'm here today representing Stop Finning EU, which is a European citizens initiative that demands a ban on the shark fin trade in Europe. I think one of the main themes of the Conference for the Future of Europe this year is the environment and the biodiversity. And we as a citizens initiative are also for the protection of biodiversity in the oceans. Many people don't know this, but every year over 200 million sharks are being killed just because of human activities and overfishing. And these sharks are mainly being killed just because of a shark fin soup that is consumed in Asia. And the European Union is one of the biggest exporters of shark fins in the world. So every year, thousands of tons of shark fins are being exported to Asia. And this has to stop because today, 1/3 of all shark and ray species are threatened with extinction. And if nothing is done to stop this, many shark species may even go extinct in the next years. So that is why we as a citizens initiative are demanding that the shark fin trade in the European Union is banned. We want to stop the import, the export, and the transit of shark fins in the European Union waters. So please support our initiative with your signature. I'll also leave our website in the chat so you can find more information. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Clara. And now Karsten Berg, who is one of the men behind the European Citizen Initiative, but is also part of the committee of the Saving Bees and Farmers European Citizen Initiative. So
thank you, Virginia, for this kind introduction. Indeed, I'm usually a democracy activist, and we had successfully campaigned for the introduction of the ECI. In this case, I was also feeling obliged to jump into the ECI Save Bees and Farmers, where I'm part of the managing board as a volunteer. And as you see from the title, this is about biodiversity, which is as at risk as never before. The European Commission, for that reason, has started the Green Deal, and that is now actually very much in danger because the industry in Brussels, the agricultural industry is very strong in the Parliament and the Council especially. So there's very much at stake, and at the same time, you also fight for the safety and survival of and plurality in terms of numbers of farmers, because also the number, not only the number of species, but also the number of farmers have been dropping by 4.2 million within 10 years. That means every day more than 1,000 farms are closing. And why is this important? Because it is especially the small farmers who are contributing to the diversity of our biodiversity, while the large-scale industrial agricultural industry is dependent on synthetic pesticides and killing biodiversity in a nutshell here. So for that reason, we say the 300 billion euros, which we as Europeans currently invest into largely industry-driven agriculture, must be spent in a different way. Must be given not only to the large-scale industry drivers who receive 80% of these 300 billion, but also to the small ones. And the other big goal of this campaign is to phase out synthetic pesticides by 2035. So this is a very feasible way how to make the transition work. And for that, this is the third goal, we need to support farmers in this transition to an ecological farming style, so that our children also have still a chance to really benefit from the biodiversity.
Thank you, Karsten. The last two ECIs before short conclusion, we move to fiscality, social economy, and the first one is the unconditional basic income ECI. Klaus Sambold.
Yes, thank you very much. Our aim is to establish the introduction of unconditional basic income throughout the EU, which ensures every person's material existence and opportunity to participate in society as part of its economic policy. And in that respect, we request the Commission to make a proposal for unconditional basic income throughout the EU, which reduce regional disparities in order to strengthen the economic, social, and territorial cohesion in the EU. That means we ask them to make a proposal, but certainly we have given in our ECI already a kind of idea what we want to have from the EU and that was already discussed in 2017, and there we had already the European Parliament and the European Commission and the European Council has stated that the EU and its member states will also support efficient, sustainable and equitable social protection systems to guarantee basic income in order to combat inequality and give freedom and so on. So in our opinion, that is a very important ECI, and we hope that we will get support from all the others, and we will support the others too. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus Sambor. Last but not least, Marco Cappato, stopglobalwarming.eu.
Thank you, Virginia. Hello to everybody. I think it's very important to create synergies among the Conference on the Future of Europe and the work that we are doing on that and the specific European Citizen Initiatives campaign. So climate change, of course, also in our poll, is on the top of the agenda. Stopglobalwarming.eu is a European Citizen Initiative proposing a common European carbon pricing, starting from a minimum of 50 euros per ton up to 100 euros within 5 years on all kind of CO2 emissions, shifting taxes from labor to CO2 emission, so in order to cope at the same time the social crisis and the climate crisis, and also creating a carbon border adjustment to protect against environmental dumping. We will, of course, bring our proposals on the Conference on the Future of Europe agenda. And on Sunday, May 9, for Europe's Day, we are participating to the EU Sign Day, asking to everybody to get information and eventually to sign not just our ECI, but all the ECI currently active. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco Cappato, and thanks to everyone. Just 1 minute to conclude this, because the website eusignday.eu, it's one of the projects that also Citizens Takeover Europe supports, and it's a call on one side to the EU institutions to increase how they provide information on participatory democracy processes, the existing, such as the European Citizen Initiative, and the new, like the Conference on the Future of Europe. But it is also a call for all civil society organizations to do as much as they can to support promoters of European Citizen Initiative, because we, or they, or us, we are citizens who are really trying to combine our demands and the functioning of the EU democracy. So we thank Citizens Takeover Europe also for the opportunity to increase the reach of all our initiatives. Thanks a lot.
Okay, and thanks a lot to you, Virginia, as well, for mobilizing the EU Sign Day, which is a very novel case. And thank you all for pitching your different European Citizens Initiative. We are sure that they will get more traction, and we really encourage all the people who are watching to vote for the future of Europe in these different important aspects. And now, without prolonging it further, I'm going to introduce another very active member of the Citizens Takeover, which is Ulrike Liebert, and she's PhD in social and political science. Besides, she's also research and teaching teaching professor in different universities. So in Barcelona, in Heidelberg, in Cornell, in Bremen, and she is a co-coordinator of the Constitutional Working Group. She's going to introduce now the different working groups that we have in Citizens Takeover Europe. Thank you, Ulrike.
Yeah, thank you, Alba, and thank you to everybody from the coalition. So everybody who is not familiar with CTOE has gotten a taste what it means to become active, to engage with the purpose, with the cause of Citizens Takeover Europe, namely doing quizzes or consultations, participating in consultations, working on a manifesto for a European Citizen Assembly, designing and developing the 10 principles for meaningful citizen participation, assemblies of solidarity, and last but not least, the ECIs, EU Sign Day. Now I will give you, after these first tastes, I will give you a more systematic overview of our working groups, because these, what you have just seen and heard, are results basically of 4 working groups. And one, you will see here a very simple organigram of our coalition. In the center, the key, the heart of it is a plenary meeting every week, Wednesdays, with representatives of the coalition partners. You see them in the outer circle, the little figure stars and circles and whatever, yeah, 50. And you have in these plenary meetings also the speakers, the coordinators of the 4 working groups. And which are these? Let us start with policy and advocacy. Policy and advocacy is something which Daniela Vancic has developed. The aim is political. It is a political and advocacy arm of our coalition. It comprises civil society actors who are members, as well as individual experts, but this is true for all of the 4 working groups. This working group drafts the political positions of the coalition and serves as a kind of civil society watchdog over the conference's developments. But I must say, after a year of waiting and delaying of the start of this conference, all of our working groups have been busy watching out and discussing and preparing for the eventual launch of it, which is happening now on Sunday. Well, the second working group, communications and events. And this is Marta Chilero and Sundus Vlad, who are disseminating, communicating busily all the manifestos and resolutions and projects which come out of our work. Well, the third working group, self-organizing process in European Citizens Assembly. You have seen and heard Michele. This working group is dedicated to the promotion of the Citizens Assemblies model in Europe, meaning as a permanent bodies, of course, not with the same citizens, but changed, drawn by lot. And it draws, of course, this is not just utopia or abstract visions, but it draws, as Michele has explained to you, on multiple experiences in Europe and beyond, which serve as practical examples on which our experiences draw, basically, lifting these local and national experiences up to scaling them up to the European transnational level. Well, and I get now to the 4th working group on the constitutional question or questions, I would rather say. This is the one which I'm coordinating with Laura, whom you have heard, who has explained the 10 principles, which we have developed to serve us as a lenses and as a compass to steer us through, us and everybody, I think, who is interested in this process, steer us through this very complex process of the Conference on the Future of Europe. How do we do that? Because the constitutional questions, what do they involve? Of course, the citizens are the basic constituents. In a constitutional system, they are key, they must be key, because democratic constitutions are based on them. And so we have started consulting them. We have developed the questions, some of which you have also responded to. And after the first 4 months of running this consultation, we have looked at the results, at the findings, and drawn up a first report, a report which will be launched on Sunday 5:30 in the afternoon, and you will find it also on the website of the coalition. Furthermore, the 10 principles have kept us busy. And in the next stage, when we are dealing with the contents, with the topics of the conference, of the citizens panels at the transnational and the local, national, regional level, we will be focusing and responding and preparing inputs also in guiding the questions, what are sensible and necessary constitutional reforms that would be necessary, and what are institutional reforms which wouldn't require treaty changes. So this is basically to give you an overview, and our consultation, let me, it's a short report, 10 pages or so, which you are very welcome to download from our website. And I think this is, in conclusion, quite interesting what came out, what's the outcome is. It's the last 4 months, basically, where our respondents, some 450, which are close to our coalition, to the 50 partners and their constituencies, they have been waiting for this planned conference on the future of Europe. And many of us were less hopeful than you were in your responses to the question which Alba has put to you. So there is maybe the two halves. Some of them, many of them, quite hopeful and excited even, and others frustrated and fearful also that this wouldn't happen, or it would lead to something maybe even worse. And so the interesting thing is not just that we have some quantitative data, but this method which we have used and developed for our purposes shows us what the motivations are, what the meaning is, what the relationship that respondents have to the European Union and their understanding of European citizenship, how this is linked to their emotional views and takes on what the future of Europe entails, and in particular the conference. So let me stop here. We are a little bit over time, but I give back to Alba. Thank you.
Thank you, Ulrike. It was a lovely briefing of the work that has been done during the constitutional group. Without postponing this further, as you said, we're running out of time. However, I want you to know that you can still participate, right, in the public consultation, which already has 600 respondents, if I'm not mistaken.
450, and it's an ongoing consultation. Do we have the link on our chat?
Yes, we will definitely share it on the chat, so you're more than welcome to take this question.
You are very, very welcome, everybody who's here to respond. Yeah,
exactly. It just takes 15 minutes and is very nice and dynamic. So good job on this, Ulrike, and thank you for the introduction to it. I'm going to pass on the word to Daniela Pankik. She's a program manager at the Democracy International. So Daniela, and also very active on CTO, especially in the advocacy working group.
Thanks, Alba, and hi, everyone, and thanks, Stamo Europa, for organizing this event, and everyone for participating. Before we finish up the first session, we'll just go over a quick recap of what we already discussed now and in the session. So first, we know we've seen with our own eyes the new civic space in Brussels that will soon open and will invite us for some exciting events and democracy workshops. At least I know for me personally, I'm excited to see some of my Citizens Takeover Europe colleagues there in person, and be different from seeing them in many little squares that I see every week. So I'm looking forward to that. You also heard an overview of our Citizens Takeover Europe coalition, our structure, and our just 1-year-old history, and what we're really doing to improve European democracy and our work with the conference on the future of Europe. You also heard, very important, from many of the running ECIs that are waiting now for your signature, and hopefully getting many new signatures on Sunday, on EU Sign Day. And now, of course, with the conference on the future of Europe just around the corner, starting finally on Sunday, at least officially, we're calling for a democratic and transparent process that really is going to center as much as possible around citizens' involvement. So at Citizens Takeover Europe, we're working to really strengthen this, to strengthen citizens and civil society's voice in the conference. Really, our overall goal is that we want citizens to design the Europe that they want, and not just politicians on their own, or even worse, unelected politicians sitting somewhere in a closed room. So we invite you to join our Citizens Takeover Europe activities. You can do this as an individual or as an organization. You can find out more information at our website. And again, that's www.citizenstakeover.eu. And if you are a civil society organization that would like to join, there is a form. It was already pushed in the chat, but I think it will be posted now again, where you can sign up as an NGO to join the coalition. And if you are a citizen that is interested in organizing locally a more citizens-centered democracy in Europe, that is another form that we want you to fill out. So that will also be posted in the chat. So feel free to stay in touch with us, follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletters. And now we'll be starting the last session of the event. So you're all invited to a transnational discussion where we will discuss in small teams the future of Europe in one question. And we'll hear some responses to that from members of the European Parliament. So keep your eye on the chat for many links coming, and also a very important link on the home Parliament session that will be posted there now. So many links to keep an eye out for.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yes, Jan, please, for the home parliaments and assemblies of solidarity, session 2.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Thank you very much for summarizing it in one question to decide on the future of Europe. We're going a little bit smaller than this in the second part of this event. I'm going to invite you to participate in one of the big projects on European citizen participation, the European Home Parliaments by Pulse of Europe. And I'm going to be asking you to discuss with the other participants of this webinar if citizens who are vaccinated against coronavirus should be able to travel freely again. And after your discussions, we will be taking the results of your discussions to a big common Zoom room where we will be talking with members of the European Parliament from Spain and from Czechia. So please join us at the second part of the event. I'm going to post a link in the chat in just a bit, or I see Thomas has already posted the link there. We will have to move there because we cannot be split up into smaller groups in this webinar. So let's see you in the other webinar.
Thank you all for participating in this first session, and we give you some minutes to join in the next session, Home Parliaments Meet Assemblies of Solidarity. You will find it in the chat, so it's just clicking, and if you have any technical problems, you can always reach us in the Q&A or in the chat as well. I see there's still a few of you. Okay, the number of participants is hopefully transiting nicely into the other room. Okay. It's going down. So if you haven't joined yet, just click on the Zoom link that we have just provided to you on the chat. And if you have any other question, you can privately message me and I will just send you the link.
So for everyone still here, the link is in the chat. So just click on it and it will go automatically. So, and if you have any questions, if you're stuck or you feel like what is going on, it's confusing, just let us know, leave it in the chat and we'll help you. I'll be here with the very last one of you. Alba, if you feel like already joining the others, you can.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I leave you managing the
well.
final.
So Terenzio had a question that is everyone going to the home parliaments? Yes, we invite everyone to go to the home parliaments because we think it's a very interesting part. I mean, it's really putting into practice everything what we've been saying. So practice what you preach. So you're very welcome to join us there. All right. Terenzio has a few questions. I'm going to promote everyone who's still here to join as a panelist. And then you can ask the questions live, but everyone else can already join the others. I'm just promoting everyone to panelists. So you're welcome to join me. All right. So for everyone who has questions, just let me know. So you can unmute yourself normally if all goes well.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, probably I have a very basic misunderstanding of everything here because from one point of view, I have the impression that the people that are here are in representation of a different organization and no more than these people here. Or there is a multitude of other people like me, for example, which is not necessarily now talking in name of one of an organization, despite I belong to one of them.
Yes. So actually, so you were joining as an attendee. And so,
yeah.
the people, so see on the screen they were talking in the name of an organization, but we had many people who were following as an attendee. But
okay.
Webinar format, you indeed couldn't see them. But in the next part, everyone will be seen on the screen.
Okay. So another thing, another question was that sometimes I wanted to do a screenshot. It was impossible to do. Probably you blocked something, and there was not the possibility to see who are all the attendees. So if one want to communicate on a private way and so on, is practically impossible. Maybe it is due to the setting, but I just wanted to give this as a feedback. And I was having a lot of problem. I could actually not participate to any poll because I couldn't click anywhere, but it went through. So it was like I could see it, but I could not join.
All right. Thank you for
the feedback just
the
for
poll. We will try to explain it better and give a bit more time next time. Yeah, for the names of everyone, the indeed the disadvantage of the webinar is indeed you cannot see all the participants. So this is for some people it's an advantage because some people they're a bit afraid to join something in which they are being seen. But in the next part you join, you will see everyone. But if
Okay.
you have any specific questions on how many people were there, or if you look for context for organizations, I can share them with you. I mean, the private mail addresses I cannot share because of the privacy, but any organizational mail addresses, of course, these are public, so I can help you with that.
And going now to this breakout session is just to give a taste a little bit about what each specific organization is proposing, and there is a question and answer specific of that. Am I right?
Yes. So if you go to the chat, there's the last link. If you click on that, you go automatically to this
Home Parliament, yeah.
Home Parliament, and this is really
Okay, you know, I belong to the Pulse of Europe, so I know what it is.
Very well what it is then.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Sorry.
Whenever you're in Brussels, you're very welcome here in our space. As you see, it's still a bit empty, but once
I should bring some flour next time.
Please.
Yes, I have one question. Is there any further discussion just now, or it is closed at the moment?
So this part is closed. And now if you click on chat, in the chat, there's a link. And if you click on that link, you can go to the home parliaments. And there you can actually join the others. So I don't know if you see the link. So in chat, there's like a link. And if you click on that one, you can
a link. Yes. This first one, link, Alba every, no homepage and so on. I find this link not.
No, wait. So I will post it again for you.
Yes.
You can find it. So it starts with HTTPS and then US02 web zoom.
Oh, yes.
And if you click on that one.
Als Diskussionsteilnehmer, zuschauen. So now I can click and listen there.
Session.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Klaus Samber.
Okay.
Bye. All the best.
Thank you.